Brilliant. Thank you, Simon. Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for the invitation to come and speak to you tonight. It's really fantastic to be able to talk to so many of you, which is very exciting. So I'm Mollie Biddell, and I work at Hampton Estate, where I've actually lived and grown up all my life because we're a family-run farming business on the western side of Surrey. So I work at Hampton Estate at the moment 2 days a week, where I lead on nature-based solutions, community engagement, lots of our nature projects. And then I also work 3 days a week at the Knepp Estate down in Sussex, where I head up the natural capital side of things and work on river restoration and the Wheel to Waves corridor and sort of nature corridors and things like that. So yeah, really exciting. I usually describe myself as an eco-anxious farmer because I'm not by any means an expert ecologist. You'll will be much, much better than me at identifying species. But my background's in geography. I've grown up farming all my life, and then I'm deeply passionate about the biodiversity and climate crises. And so you quite quickly realize that you need to learn as much as you can about ecology and learn from all the intelligent people around you. So I'd say I'm quite a generalist, but increasingly working in the space of trying to deliver nature restoration projects through farming or through farming businesses. So today I'm going to take you, it's going to be a whiz through lots of pictures and some slides, and I'll try and stick to time because it'd be great to have time for questions afterwards. But I'm going to whiz through Hampton, what we are, where we are, what we do. And we're going to be focusing on we focus on regenerative management and restorative land management as well. So focusing on both of those. As I say, so Hampton Estate is about 900 hectares. We are, next slide, here we are. So hopefully you can kind of understand where we are from that map there. We're just off the North Downs Way. So we're just off the Hog's Back in between Farnham and Guildford in this southwest corner of Surrey. We border the Riverway and we go up to the chalk ridge of the North Downs. The thing that makes Hampton really special is our geology. Well, lots of things make it special, but our geology in particular. So we've got the chalk ridge of the North Downs, the southern slopes of the North Downs. Then we've got a thin band of gault clay. And then after the thin band of gault clay, we're completely on sand. So we've got a real diversity of habitats across the business. And across the area, we're working in quite a varied landscape. I've got a slide in a minute that shows you kind of exactly that breakdown of those habitat types and what we're working across. My parents managed the farm on behalf of the rest of the family. It's been in my family for 4 generations, and it's always been a diversified, trying to be forward-looking rural business. And I'll touch on some of the enterprises that we run in a minute. So very specific because of our habitat types and because of the landscape that we're working within. And also because of the huge amounts of population around us. So this map here is a population density map of the people around us. And I think one thing that makes us quite specific at Hampton is that we say we're very chimney potted. We've got an awful lot of people living around us, which obviously throws up conflicts, but more excitingly, throws up amazing opportunities. So opportunities for engagement, opportunities for volunteering, opportunities to be a business that reconnects people with the landscape, with nature, with where their food comes from. So people are at the core of what we do at Hampton, as well as landscape and biodiversity. This slide, I'm sure many of you know this picture, this map that we're looking at here. These are the bee lines across the UK. So this was when Bug Life mapped all of the strategic pollinator highways across the UK and where we should focus when we're looking at restoring pollinator habitats or habitats that are critical for pollinators. And I absolutely love this map because what it demonstrates is that Hampton, which is that pin in the middle, is slap bang in the middle of a bee line, the bee line that crosses over the North Downs, which is really, really exciting and justifies that strategically we're in an incredibly significant place for nature. And as I said, that's down to our diversity of habitats. So we've got heathland, chalk downland, woodland, we've got acid grassland and wetlands as well. So yeah, that to me, the Beelines map is what really highlights that we need to be thinking about biodiversity, nature and our habitats as a business. You'll notice I just put lots of nice photos in here because it's a gloomy day outside and we need nice pictures to feel positive. So these pictures here just give you a flavour of some of the things we do. So very diversified. We've got 10 full-time employees at Hampton. That's a picture of my sister with a large hunk of beef because we have a beef herd that I'll talk more about in a minute. We do forestry, we grow hops for beer. We host events, we host a lot of people on our landscape. We've got properties that we've converted into houses that we let for local people to live and grow our local community. We've got a campsite, we've got some commercial buildings, tea rooms, offices. We do venison, there's a few other things, energy, all of the sorts of things that a diversified, forward-looking rural business is trying to do. We have fingers in lots of different pies. We also, because we're so close to London, we end up being a good location for the odd film to come be filmed with us. So lots of exciting things. There's no one set day in the office because there's always something new coming across your desk. But that gives you a flavour. And then this map here, hopefully you can see, this is how the habitat types or the land uses at Hampton work. So we've got that chalk downland kind of coming off the A31, off the Hogsback Road. Some of that is like designated as calcareous grassland. Some of it is chalk grassland that's appearing after having been, we're doing some arable reversion and moving land from previous arable back into chalk downland, which is really exciting. All of the green is woodland, so we're over 40% forested. That's a mixture of softwoods, so conifer softwoods that we are growing for timber, and native broadleafs that we manage for amenity and biodiversity purposes. But we have a very holistic woodland management plan, and we're trying to do as much continuous cover forestry as possible. Then the light green is the grassland, and most of that is on sand. Some of it's on clay, but the stuff on sand is species-rich acid grassland, as I said, botanically very interesting, not necessarily so good at growing thick grass as you might be used to in a Cheshire dairy farm. The purple is our heathland, so that's Putnam Common, which is a mosaic heathland that I will talk much more about. And then there's also an area that is tenanted that is run by a large blueberry farm, so growing blueberries and raspberries for supermarket shelves. So a real mixture of land use types there, but I think I've covered most of the main ones in that map, but it gives you a feel of the diversity of the different types of landscapes that we're managing. So all of these photos are taken from Hampton as well. I should have said that. So lots of nice pictures of the nature that we're lucky to be managing and working with and surrounded by. I'm going to focus on regenerative land management first, and then we'll move on to some of the more restorative land management that we're doing. I mean, the two, regenerative and restorative, that's such similar words. And for us, nature, food production, ecosystem resilience, carbon sequestration, it all goes together. It's never either or. It's always, how are we managing this habitat that we're very lucky to be managing? How are we managing our landscape in line with what's best for the landscape? And how can we also make sure that it's productive and we're creating a viable business case from it too? So we're really fortunate we don't have to see nature and food production as things that go antagonistically against each other. For us, they very much coalesce, and you'll see why as I explain what we do. So in terms of regenerative farming, I'm going to talk through our cows, our Pasture for Life accredited Sussex herd, which are our ecosystem engineers and also our protein providers. And then our other protein providers are our wild roe venison, our wild roe deer, talk through our venison enterprise. I'll mention our hops, and I'll just touch on our woodlands as well. I haven't got so much time, so I'm not going to go into too much detail on anything, but if you've got questions, do put them in the chat or ask me at the end. So in terms of our cows, we used to be a dairy farm. I grew up with dairy cows, and as many of you all know, dairy prices in the 90s were pretty tricky, hard to make a dairy farm make sense in the early noughties, late 90s. So we sold the dairy cows, and we needed some four-legged lawnmowers, as my dad called them. So we started up a herd of Sussex cows, who are those beautiful kind of chestnutty coloured cows in the slide there. The great thing about these cows is that they are really well suited to our landscape. So they thrive in our landscape. They can be outdoors all year round. We don't house them indoors ever. They are Pasture for Life accredited, which means, or certified, which means that they only ever eat the sward from our farm. So they only are allowed to eat the pastures that we grow or that are growing naturally. And they have an incredibly diverse diet, as you'll see, because we graze them across the downlands, across the heathland, and on those nice species-rich swards across our grasslands. So we do also feed them hay from our pastures in the winter as well, because obviously at the moment there's not much grass growing, and we bale graze them, which means we just roll the bales out in the field and use that as a bit of a seed transfer as well. So yeah, they're great. They work really, really well. They exist within our landscape brilliantly. They're thriving. We have 54 breeding cows, so 54 cows to calve in a couple of months' time. And then we sell the beef direct to consumers. So here are some pictures of we call them meat parties, and people come, and we've done this for the past 20 years. They make their bespoke order. We take the orders, and each month we send those orders off to our butcher, who's 5 miles away. And the butcher cuts them distinct to exactly what our customers need that month. And then we have about 100 to 200 people who turn up on a nice Friday morning, come and have a cup of coffee, have some cake, and buy our beef. For us, being Pasture for Life certified is really, really important, because we really believe in protein and beef that is doing good for the planet and good for ourselves as well. So these cows are critical for us in enhancing the habitats that we're managing. The way that they graze, we mob graze them. So we graze them quickly across the land in small compartments. And that means that we're giving grasslands enough rest period to regenerate. But it also means we're helping to sequester more carbon to enhance the biodiversity across the habitat. And it also, unsurprisingly, if a cow is just eating the natural forage in its landscape, it's a much healthier cow, produces much more delicious beef. That beef is also proven to be much better for us. You can go into all the details of kind of conjugated linoleic acids and things. There's a lot of omega benefits to having pasture-fed meat. And if there's one thing you take away from the meat chat, is that pasture-fed is different from grass-fed. So a cow can be certified as grass-fed, but that means it only has to be fed grass 50% of its life, whereas pasture-fed means it's eating grass for 100% of its life. So that's really important to us, and that's what we want to be selling. So onto our venison, which is our other form of protein. We've got lots of wild roe deer across Hampton. As you may know, there's an awful lot of deer in the UK at the moment. Hundreds and hundreds and thousands, so many more than we could even begin to count. And because we take our woodland management really seriously, and because we're always growing and creating new woodlands, we've got natural regen going, so natural regeneration of woodlands going on. We're planting woodlands where the natural regeneration isn't taking off. We need to keep on top of our venison, well, of our deer population, because otherwise everything would be munched to the ground. So we have a full-time stalker who's culling venison. We culled just over 70 animals last year, so there's quite a lot of deer coming off. And we really try to communicate to everyone why we think wild roe venison is the planet's next superfood, because it's super, super good for you. It's super lean. It's totally wild. These animals are totally wild. And by controlling the deer population, that means that we're ensuring that more and more trees and hedges and plants are growing. Of course, we want deer in our landscape. We just have so many that we need to stay on top of the population, as we know there's no natural predator for them out there. So other than cars, so it's much safer that we can control them and enjoy their meat than have cars crash into them. So those are our two forms of protein that we're producing. And you can see how importantly both of these forms of protein are embedded within how we're thinking about managing our landscape. So onto our hops. We grow Fuggles hops. Hops are there are less than 50 hop growers in the UK. Hops are quite tricky to grow. They're quite labour intensive. We've grown hops for as long as anyone can remember. There have been hop gardens on the edge of Putnam, the village that we grow them in. And they're quite hard to grow without chemicals. So hop growing traditionally is quite input heavy. It's quite artificially input heavy. But we really believe in regenerative agriculture, which is a move away from focusing on chemicals, a move away from being reliant on fertilizers and herbicides and pesticides. And instead, we want to focus on the soil biology of our systems. We want to focus on how the soil is functioning, make sure that the whole ecosystem is functioning well, make sure that we're increasing the fertility of our soils, and we've got lots of nice fungal activity, etc., etc. So we're shifting our hop growing business, and we're trying to really endorse and present regenerative principles within our hop growing. So things like planting cover crops and making sure that the soil is always covered. We've been integrating sheep into our hop gardens, which is quite exciting, and they're there and they add organic manure into the hop gardens. We use integrated pest management, so we're using biological control to control some of those pests instead of having to use pesticides. And we're also reducing the artificial fertilizer usage by putting on digestate that comes from an anaerobic digester instead. So it's all about the sustainability of the system, but it's more than just sustaining. It's about regenerating the system, regenerating our soils to make sure that we can continue to grow hops into the future, particularly as our climate gets drier and drier. So one of our biggest risk factors at Hampton is climate change, definitely, and how much drier the climate's getting, but also how much wetter the climate's getting. But because we're on such sandy soil, the drought in the summer, if we get a drought, we just burn up, and the hops really suffer because they don't like hot, dry temperatures. So we're thinking about regenerative farming, about regenerative principles in order to ensure our resilience as a business and as a system, make sure we can continue growing hops into the future. So here are some nice pictures of our hops. They go into beers all across the UK. Fuggles is a very traditional variety. We grow them very well. We're very proud of our hop growing tradition. And they are a very old-fashioned aroma. So you wouldn't see a Fuggle hop going into an IPA. They'll go into these kinds of beers. Hopefully some of you drink some of those. And a classic kind of pint of one of those is what our hops will go into. So that's hops. Onto forestry. We have, can I just ask, has everyone seen a green line across my screen? Can anyone, I don't know if anyone's seen that. No, hopefully not. Are we all okay? I'm assuming we're okay.
Yeah.
If anyone's seen that, that's just my screen gone funny.
No,
Anyway,
it's clear here.
it's clear. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Richard. That's fine. Onto forestry. So at Hampton, as I said, 40% of Hampton is wooded. We're managing our woodlands for a variety of different reasons. We have 10-year management plans that we cycle through. We're managing them for timber because we want to be producing timber that really top quality timber that goes to sawmills across the UK. We have got biomass boilers across many of our properties at Hampton. So we're creating logs and, well, we're creating wood chip, which goes into those biomass boilers. We've got a campsite. I'll move on to that in a minute. And that's where we're producing logs for. And then we're also obviously constantly restocking all of our woodlands. So as soon as we're thinning or coppicing or clear felling, which we do less of, then we will be restocking those woodlands. So our woodland management is really threefold. It's about timber, it's about creating good wood-based resource that we can use as a nation. It's about biodiversity, and then it's also about access, because we've opened up the majority of our woodlands to the public so that people can enjoy them and walk around them and have a good time in the woods. So that's what's going on with our forestry. We've got a full-time forester, and we also use some forestry consultants for advice on some of our bigger operations. So those are our sort of main farming enterprises or traditional farming enterprises. And I'm now going to move on to some of the kind of more habitat focused projects. What I would say, the way that I describe this is that we are a farming business and we use our farming tools to try and restore habitats in the best way that we can. And we really lean on the shoulders of experts. So we pull lots of expert knowledge in to help guide us in what we're doing and learn more. We're always on a learning journey about what we should be doing at Hampton. So some of the things I'm going to touch on now, particularly the Heathland Enhancement Project that we've been running for the past few years. Chalk down and restoration, I'll talk on that. I won't touch so much on the pond restoration, but we do pond restoration, and I'm doing a big project at the moment looking at natural flood management across the estate as well, which is really exciting. We do lots of hedge planting. I've mentioned that we do lots of tree planting. We're always planting new woodlands, restocking or planting new woodlands, and that's part of that ongoing woodland management as well. In terms of how this works as a business, so we're lucky we've got 4 countryside stewardship schemes that run across Hampton. So those are funding schemes from the government to support us in restoring habitats, which is good, it's helpful. It's really important because otherwise we wouldn't be able to do this work. So that covers the costs of these projects, which is really, really important because some of these projects become quite costly, as I'm sure some of you will know. So on to Putnam Common. So Putnam Common was that area of heathland on the map that I showed you, the purple area. So it's on the eastern side of the estate. And it's a really amazing place. It's part of it is a triple SI. The story of Putnam Common really is that it has always been part of Hampton Estate. It has been used for many different things. It's got an Iron Age hill fort in the middle of it. It's a proper heathland mosaic. My great grandmother in the 1960s decided that she should open it up to the public. So we were the first private landowner to have, or land manager to have, an agreement with Surrey County Council, an access agreement, so that people could come and enjoy the landscape. And yeah, it's a really important landscape for lots of different species. But I'll flip to the next picture so you can see that. So we've always managed it in line with the triple SI requirements, and we've always managed it sort of as we should. But it got to the point where we needed to renew our management plan for Putnam Common. And this was back in 2020, 2021. So we've got a brilliant firm of ecologists who are based in Hampshire who hold our hand on all of our habitat restoration queries and problems and questions. And we brought them up to Putnam Common. I say up to Putnam Common because Putnam Common is quite hilly. So we took them up to Putnam and we said, guys, what do you think? Did a large walkover. They did some research into the site. I should have said it's 180 hectares. And essentially our brilliant ecologist advisors said, wow, this is a really, really special site. It's really important for nature. And it's doing great things for biodiversity right now. But there are some critical things that are missing and it could be so much better. So it's a really unique site, but it could be of a better condition. So we said, okay, cool. What do we need to do to make it better? And they suggested that we create a 100-year vision for nature restoration at Putnam Common. So this is the 100-year vision here. So we're thinking long term because that's important for us. And really, the most important thing was to bring back grazing to Putnam Common. So we hadn't grazed Putnam Common ever, or not ever. We hadn't grazed Putnam Common for the past 200 years. Obviously, Putnam Common was once common land in the sense that there would have been lots of people who'd had grazing rights over it. There are just two commoners' rights on Putnam Common, us and our neighbour. But we're in charge of management and we own it. So it's up to us to kind of decide what we're doing with it. It was really important to reintroduce grazing because we were missing this really dynamic ecological engineering, the grazing that that strips away the nutrients, creates the heathland that's so important for the ground nesting birds and the butterflies and the invertebrates and the everything, the reptiles, etc., that we know thrive in this type of landscape. So that was really important to reintroduce grazing. Historically, we hadn't been able to because it is Crow Act land and you can't put up fences on Crow Act land. So it wasn't that we hadn't tried to introduce grazing, it was just physically impossible to. So I'll get to how we've introduced grazing in a minute. We also wanted to restore some wetlands. So Putnam's really unique because it's got dry heath, it's got acid grassland, it's got wood pasture, and it's also got 3 boggy mires that run through it. So 3 valleys that are really precious boggy mires. So we wanted to restore those wetlands because, unsurprisingly, with no grazing pressure on the habitat, with no cows grazing, it had gone from being a woody heath to a heathy wood. And so those wetlands were drying up as trees were growing and water was being transpired out of them. So we wanted to do that. We needed to reduce bracken. And importantly, as I said, Putnam Common is open to the public. So making sure that we're bringing everyone with us, that we're creating opportunities for volunteering and making people feel part of this landscape that they hold so dear to them. So we created a 10-year management plan to kickstart the 100-year vision, because a 100-year vision is quite a large thing to crack on with. So created a 10-year management plan. We're 2 years into that management plan now. And it's been a really exciting journey so far. And we're just constantly learning, but it's been great. So, oh, I just wanted to bring this up. These are all nice pictures of Putnam at different stages, but this quote here comes from the management plan, and I think really highlights why it's so important that we're prioritising biodiversity here, and what an important kind of location it is. And there is really high pressure from recreational use, but that's something that we're increasingly trying to learn to work with and manage and work out how we can empower people to think about using this landscape as responsibly as possible. In terms of those habitats, I've sort of mentioned what's currently there. These are the types of things we're looking at. This is how the habitat's split. It's quite diverse, it's quite varied. And essentially what we're trying to do with our management plan is we're trying to open up the landscape, create more space for heather because that's so precious. And as I'm sure you know, we've lost 85% of our lowland heather in the past, or our lowland heathland in the past 200 years. So a real priority habitat for us to be managing. We're trying to reduce, there's a lot of pine, a lot of conifer woodland that had grown up over the past 100 years, and quite a lot of birch. So try and open up slightly for those priority habitats, and then importantly, as I said, restore the wetlands. Oh, here are some of the species that we'd find there, and species we'd hope to find there. Obviously, silver-studded blue, you'd expect to see those, hopefully, fingers crossed, lots and lots. Also, interestingly, the first ever record of a bog myrtle, no, that's not right, of a bog orchid, sorry, I was reading the slide, of a bog orchid in Surrey was recorded in in the easternmost valley mire at Putnam Common in the 1800s. So we know that bog orchids once were there, and we always joke that a sign of success would be if a bog orchid ever returns, which I think is quite unlikely, but that's part of our mission to re-wet those boggy mires. So these slides here, these pictures here just show you, hopefully you can see it's quite small, but on the left is the 1940s, and you can see that's from the early on RAF maps, I think, of the UK, 1940s, and Putnam Common is very open, and then moved to 2021, and it's really become incredibly forested. So that's that idea of not having the grazing on that landscape, not having, grazing is what created heathlands in the first place, as we know, and heathlands are amazing, but inherently humanly created landscapes because of the grazing and the pig reetling and things that went on. So reintroducing grazing was really critical. And when I'm trying to explain to people who maybe aren't so attuned to habitat restoration and biodiversity, what we're actually doing to restore habitats at Putnam Common, I just boil it down to these three things. So as I've said, reintroducing grazing is the most important, targeted tree and scrub removal, particularly in those wetlands, to try and re-wet their peat-based wetlands, so to try and re-wet them, and then also bracken control, because bracken's everywhere, and as we know, it's incredibly dominant. So that's what we're doing. The way that we have reintroduced grazing is super exciting. So this is the technology that unlocked the whole project for us. And actually, silly, I haven't put any photos of the cows in, but I've got some pictures that are relevant in a minute. But what we've used is this technology called no fence technology. And no fence technology is amazing. It's Norwegian technology. And what it enables us to do is we put geo collars around all of our cows. So all of our cows wear these collars. And with those collars, we can then draw on our phones on an app geolocated boundaries that don't exist in real life. You don't see the boundary, but they're geo-referenced, and they exist over the ether. And what it means is that in real life on the ground, if a cow steps outside that boundary, they'll get an electric shock and they'll immediately go back in. So we're creating these they're called virtual fences, really, these virtual fences across Putnam Common, virtual grazing areas, which the cows then exist within, and they operate just like fences, and they stop the cows from exiting the area that we want them to graze in. So I said it gives the cow an electric shock. Before it gives the cow an electric shock, the cow gets a noise siren, a sort of noise signal that we train up our cows before we put them onto the common. And the cows are very good at identifying, oh, I heard the noise, I have to do a 180. And they turn around and they move away from where the boundary is. So it's the most incredible technology because what it's enabled us to do is graze across parts of our landscape where we don't have fences, reintroduce that really important ecological engineering of grazing to help us restore our precious habitat. So it's been critical. We wouldn't be able to do any of this project without this amazing tech. It also enables us to track exactly where the cows are, where they're moving, what they're doing, how much activity they've had. So we can see, oh, they spent more time in the boggy mire, or they spent more time in the birch, or they really enjoy that particular area of the heath, or they like that acid grass in there. So it's incredibly powerful. And I think it's a really lovely example of how modern technology can enable us to re-establish some of these old processes that we might have lost from our landscape. So we're the biggest fans of no fence. We think it's absolutely incredible. And that's how we've reintroduced grazing, because you'll remember I said we weren't able to put fences up. So they're virtual fences, and cows have their collars that allow those virtual fences to act. The collars are solar panelled, so we don't have to change them too often. And the cows have got incredibly good at following me around the commons. So I can herd them across the common, and they usually come with us now. So it's working really well. Um, you remember I said that Putnam Common is highly walked and highly accessed. We've done some visitor survey analysis, and we think we have into the thousands of people visiting Putnam every week, particularly in peak seasons. So we really want to bring people with us on this journey of nature restoration, but we're doing some quite radical things, namely putting cows in a landscape where people like to walk their dogs. We're also cutting down trees and telling everyone we're trying to fix biodiversity. So that's a message that we have to get across to people really clearly, why we're bringing trees down, what type of habitat we want, why we're prioritising open areas of heathland, why we want to re-wet the boggy mires and things like that. So there's a lot of public engagement to do, but we don't want this to be finger wagging and telling people off. We want this to be bringing everyone with us. And we talk about creating a nature-based community. So trying to make everyone feel really involved, trying to bring people with us in terms of nature restoration. And actually, the cows have been the most amazing kind of part of the public engagement. So one thing we have is we put QR codes around Putnam Common, and people can scan the QR code and they can see on their phone immediately where the cows are, which is, again, just a brilliant part of the technology. And that's worked really well because people who want to avoid the cows can avoid the cows, but also it's created real interest in the cows, and people are really wanting to know why the cows are there, why their grazing will help us create more heathland habitat. And sometimes people like to go and find the cows. We try and tell people not to feed the cows because that is a problem. But also actually having the cows on the landscape has been helpful for reinforcing our two most important messages, which is please keep your dogs under control. And we're asking people to keep their dogs on leads during ground nesting season, because these birds are so precious to Putnam Common, and dogs are the biggest disturbance of ground nesting birds, as we know. So saying to people, keep your dogs on leads, that will mean that the cows don't interfere with the dogs and the dogs don't interfere with the cows. And also we're supporting the bird population, and also asking people to clear up after their dog. We talk a lot about neospora and the risks of neospora to cows. And that's been a really powerful way of trying to shift behaviours and make people, you might have seen on my first slide, I said, we're moving this from just being an area that's focused on dog walking to an area that's focused on nature with responsible dog walkers. So part of that public engagement is a lot of events. So we do drop-ins, we try and communicate things as clearly as possible. We put signs out, and we held our first ever bio blitz up on Putnam Common last year, which was amazing. We've done quite a few bird walks. We've done moth trap evenings. We've done come and meet the cow walks, and they're all really popular. So that's been going really, really well. Our bio blitz was amazing. We had over 500 people come. We did it in collaboration with Surrey Wildlife Trust. We had over 500 people come and want to record, and I've really, really enjoyed getting to know the amazing local recording community, and met lots of brilliant people who are really passionate about recording different species, all kinds of different species across Putnam Common. So that's been exciting too. Obviously, we're putting quite a lot of work into restoring this habitat, and trying to restore this landscape. Or it's not necessarily restoring, it's enhancing it. How are we measuring that impact? These are all pictures from the BioBlitz. Well, we are doing a few different things, but I think over the next few years, we're going to try and, well, hopefully this year we'll be establishing a more formalised monitoring plan for the common. We're kind of feeling our way as we realise what's important to monitor, what we've got baseline data for, those sorts of things. So this year is the first year we've done breeding bird surveys, and we've done the most incredible in-depth territory mapping. So I've got every single breeding territory of a breeding bird mapped across Putnam Common, which is amazing data. And I'm really excited about that. So that's great. Brilliantly, thanks to Butterfly Conservation, we've got a butterfly transect across Putnam Common now. And we also have a butterfly transect across our chalk downland, which is fantastic. And such valuable data in terms of understanding whether the kinds of things we're doing is actually helpful and successful. We have some reptile things. I'd like to do more reptile monitoring. We're monitoring habitat, in particular bryophytes, because of the boggy mires that have got some really interesting bryophytes, and hopefully over the time we'll have more and more interesting species emerging, particularly as we graze it at the right time. As I said, we hosted that BioBlitz, which was really great engagement, but also great to collect so much data. The data from the BioBlitz is currently being processed. And then we also have a Space for Nature pilot, which is a project run by Surrey University and Surrey Wildlife Trust, monitoring habitats and trying to use AI to ensure that our satellite imagery and data that we're collecting matches with the habitats on the ground. So that's exciting. And more we're just growing the monitoring that we're doing, but making sure that we can do it, that it's cost effective, and that it's also providing data that's helpful to us, and we're not just collecting data for data's sake. Now, I have to admit, I didn't take this photo. This photo did come from the web, but this is just some of our preliminary figures from that bird territory mapping exercise that we've done this year. So 736 breeding territories found. Now, we didn't record the whole common, so that's 115 hectares, and you'll remember I said the whole common is 180 hectares, so some bits we left out because they were less suitable for breeding birds, and you have to draw a line somewhere, otherwise everyone's walking for hours. So 46 different species. There you can see some of the breeding territories that were exciting to have seen: nightjar, cuckoo, woodlark, tree pipit, spotted flycatcher, etc. In total, there were 70 species of bird recorded, but obviously not all of them breed at Putnam. And just that was, again, from the ecologists who did the bird territory mapping. They're happy that despite really high levels of human disturbance, we are seeing quite nice numbers. But as we encourage people to keep their dogs under control and really support the landscape, we'll see better numbers, hopefully, in the future. And then I just popped this on here. This is thanks to Bill for sending this data through earlier in the year, earlier this year. This is some of the results of the Putnam Common 2024 butterfly transect. So, Bill, you've probably got much more to say on that in the questions, but as we know, it was quite not a very warm year, and this is the first year that we've done the butterfly transect. So exciting though to see some of those species, and hopefully we'll just see better and more for 2025. It's quite a long transect, and it tries to cover as much of that varied habitat as possible. These are all photos of people doing exciting bird watching and insect watching talks and walks during the BioBlitz. And now here, I've just put some nice inspiring photos from the BioBlitz in, because we have a brilliant photographer who took some brilliant pictures. So trying to get kids involved is really important. We want lots and lots of kids to be excited about this stuff. We've got a lot of bee wolf wasps and lots of burrowing bees, particularly on the day of the BioBlitz, because it was really hot and we're really sandy. So that was exciting. And our lovely photographer managed to capture some of the most incredible photos. So that's just another nice one I put in, because I couldn't help not put some nice photos in. But obviously we can't do all of this by ourselves. We work with lots of brilliant people to learn about what we're doing. We're part of something called Heathland Connections, which is brings together, we sit on the steering group, we're the only sort of farming partner there, but it brings together lots of managers of heathlands in southwest Surrey, so that we're all talking together and making sure that we're sharing our kind of successes and our tribulations. But yeah, it's a really exciting project, and I'm really excited to see where our Putnam Common project goes. I mean, it's a 100-year project, so I don't think I probably won't be alive once it's finished, but and it probably won't be finished, but it's really exciting to see the engagement and to see people starting to connect with the fact that it's such an important site for nature, and great that we can put the cows back on. I should have said we've got a painting of cows grazing Putnam Common from about 200 years ago, and it was a very exciting moment when we could recreate that painting 2 years ago when we were finally able to put them back up with their no fence collars on, and they're grazing away and having a great time. And interestingly, so from a farming perspective, it's great because that allows us to increase our grazing platform. So we can have more cows, so we can produce more amazing protein for people to enjoy. And also the cows that have come off the common and then gone into the butchery were a particularly good condition. And so they're obviously eating such a diverse diet of everything. They love to be in the middle of the birch and things like that. But I think that's really coming through in their condition and their health. So I'm going to whiz through these. So now we're on to chalk downland at Hampton. So as I said, we've got chalk downland. We're actively restoring this chalk downland. We've planted at the top of the chalk downland, we've planted a very small connectivity corridor of trees just to act as a buffer, because the A31, as those of you who've ever driven along it, is really noisy and polluted. And we wanted to create a kind of air pollution, noise pollution windshield as you then move into the chalk downland. So we do lots of volunteering days because we have to pop all of the scrub that's emerging on the chalk downland off. And I know some butterfly conservation people, some of you guys are coming along to do some popping and have done some popping and some kidney vetch scrapes as well. So really exciting to be working with lots of people on this. And yeah, it's great. We've got more and more volunteer days happening. So that's great. Here is a nice picture. And what's quite special here is from the top of the chalk, you're looking across to the heath on the left, which is quite special. And here are, thanks to Nick for some of his figures on this is again the 2024 transect across the Hampton Downland, which has been running, Nick, you might correct me, but I think it's been running for 2 years. Maybe 3. And it's really great to have that data collected. And I'm really excited from a butterfly perspective that we're collecting data on both the chalk downland and the heathland, and that the two you really can see the two connecting. Interestingly, we've been hosting some volunteering days in the past month where we've been planting lots of hedge, and we've been planting hedges that literally connect up create brilliant habitat connectivity between the heathland and then right up onto the chalk downland, which is exciting. So constantly thinking about connectivity and how we connect things. So that's sort of the end of my bit around nature restoration. I'm just quickly going to finish on community. There are lots of other things that we're doing from a nature restoration perspective. So newt ponds, we're putting in newt ponds. As I said, we're looking at natural flood management. We're always looking at our trees, and we work closely with people like the Surrey Botanical Society to really understand the species within our acid grasslands, and thinking about how we can make sure that our grazing and the way that we're grazing is supporting the biodiversity of those grasslands is really important to us. But on to community. So people are critical to Hampton. We want to be creating jobs for people. We want to be creating great homes for people. And we want to be creating great landscapes for people to enjoy and feel at home in. So we've got lots of footpaths. The North Downs Way comes through Hampton. As I've said, we've opened up lots of areas of Hampton as permissive access, which is really important. We have these volunteering days. We have a campsite that is a totally off-grid, eco-friendly campsite. We have a forest school, a couple of forest schools that operate out of Hampton. We host schools from lots of different places, but particularly we host a school every year that's based just next to Grenfell, and it's probably my favourite day of the year when we get to host all of those guys and bring them out into a field and let them run around. We hold a very large open farm Sunday where we welcome about 3,000 people to come to the farm. And that's what most of these photos are. Experience what we do, come and do some pond dipping in our pond, come and learn about soils, come and learn about woodland management, plant a tree, that kind of stuff. I've talked a lot about the community engagement and the citizen science that we're doing in some of our particularly on Putnam Common, but across the estate in general. And then we have got a venue, which are some old farm buildings that we use for lots of community events. They're also used for weddings and events and conferences. And then we try, when we get the chance, to communicate what we're doing as much as possible through social media. So I run our social media accounts, and we're often posting, just trying to show people what land management is about and how exciting it is that we can deliver these solutions that society really needs through how we manage our landscape. So we put that all out through social media, and we have a monthly newsletter as well that keeps everyone informed and reminds people of when to get their beef and venison orders into us, which is really important. And it's lovely because we've created, I think, or sort of continually creating a community of people who really connect with Hampton and connect with what we're doing and want to be part of it. Really passionate about getting young people to think about a career in food and farming and land management and nature as the green sector increasingly emerges. So that's really exciting. And it's really rewarding when people realize what you're doing and enjoy it and become part of it. Um, and then I couldn't finish without talking about Wagoners Campsite because it's great and it opens in a few weeks' time. So I'm thinking about it at the moment. But yeah, Wagoners, we started it in COVID when we thought, everyone wants to get outside. This is ridiculous. We can open up a field and let people come and enjoy it and give them a chance to have some fresh air. So that was however many years ago, 4 years ago now. And it's just gone from strength to strength. It's really low key. We've got compost toilets, but as I said, we're totally off grid. Um, and really the people who come because they want to experience nature, they want to go and see Putnam Common, they want to walk around the woods, they want to go to our brilliant local pubs, including our new as a community, we've bought out our local pub in our next door village. So that's exciting. And we get lots of people cycling to us. We have showers, but they're only cold showers because we don't have any electricity. And we're just trying to encourage people to enjoy walking and enjoy experiencing the landscape. So yeah, Wagoners is open basically every weekend from Easter until the end of summer, and it seems to be really enjoyed by lots of people, which is really important. So that's my final slide, because how can you get involved? Well, you can follow us on our social media accounts if you'd like to see lots of candid videos of farming and land management and all things nature restoration. You can sign up to Bill's newsletter, who's my dad. Everyone can come and enjoy the landscapes and footpaths that we're managing, that we're stewarding for people. I think some butterfly conservation team are coming volunteering and have been before, so that's really exciting. Look forward to seeing you. We've got the campsite, and we always say to people, if you want to, if thinking about your diet and what you want to eat and how you want to save the planet, because it's amazing that the power for change sits on everyone's plate, and such a powerful decision you make when you choose what you put on your plate. And buying pasture-fed beef and wild venison from us is one of the best ways to invest in kind of creating resilient, climate resilient, biodiverse landscapes, because both of our beef and our venison and what we provide, that's part of that story and part of that system. Yeah, or come and find us at an event or anything else that we're hosting. So that is, I think, 45 minutes, roughly, a little bit over. But I will stop sharing now and get ready to take questions, and I'm hoping that there are a few.